passion that I have found out of heartbreak and anger. I know that happiness is stability, but stability is not a desk job. And I refuse to sacrifice my aspirations for an income and security. What the hell is security? Sick, I between the shadows. We are the voices for the voiceless. Understanding leads to progress. Wake up and see what's in front of your eyes. Express what you feel and come alive. This is the story of you living the truth. Only life itself is bigger than you. We are the voices for the voiceless. Together we can stop the silence.
passing by. All the time we're running. It's a constant climb. Forget the things you know. So where do we go this time? Said that I could rest a while. Did I get the feeling wrong? And all we do is wait in line, hoping just to lose our time. When you run, you're on. You're on your own. Streetlights on again. I walk without a name, strangely beloved, yet unrequited. Do you feel like you missed it? The safety in your eyes, to walk without disguise. I was wrong, you were right, there's no need to lie. Giving it away this time. How could you ignore your mind when you're on your own? You're on your own. Giving it away this time. How could you ignore your mind when you're on your own? You're on your own. I'll be careful with the soft spots, I'll be smart. If you're careful with my heart, everybody gets lost somehow. It's where we were meant to start. Now I was right and you were wrong. Every single night I sleep alone. You see, some men can't face defeat, some let it leak into their bones. But not me, I'm not scared of the things that I love. It's with them I sleep at night. When the devil comes, listen, it was there right from the start. I lost my heart in the sea where all the angels sing. All that's left is your conscience. Everything you try to drown. And I can tell by the way your hands speak when I'm holding them. If you say you really mean it, then I wanna be everything that you say. You say. From the ashes of the past, where statues grow, if we say that I would cry for the unknown, will I be destined horrified? Don't follow, you believe, but everything's changing. When love is the only thing we need. Wasting up the feeling and you wouldn't find out. Got a head full of violent pictures, no way to work it out, and I know now. I was young, wanted to grow older. Now I'm grown, can I take it all back? Got a head full of violent pictures, I made them all myself, and I know by the grace of God, I wake up in the morning with nothing but my friends and memories of dreaming of you. And I know I need forgiveness like a hole in the head. Take me backwards, I don't wanna know who I am. God, wake up in the morning with nothing but my friends and memories of dreaming of you. And I know I can forgiveness like a hole in the head. Take me backwards. And by the grace of God, I wake up in the morning with nothing but my friends and memories of dreaming of you. And I know I need forgiveness like a hole in the head. Take me backwards. Take me backwards. And take me backwards. I don't wanna know who I am.
Let's go find one in Plaza and get out of here. Where's that son of a... He's walking to the east. No,
They are sick!
no, give me the illusion instead. Damn, where is it? Okay, here we go.
Zombie So strange, I remember you in protest of a prayer, falling back from seas to be sailed. Swear I saw the shooter, gold teeth and a double dare. Postmodern warning, see me blind to fail.
and welcome to Clutch of Kick episode 10. There's a lot to talk about, and we've got a special guest as well, a new face to the show, Joe Edwards, goes by the alias of Strong, 2 times NALCS champion in terms of coaching as well, just a general absolute genius when it comes to the European Valorant scene as well. So happy to have you, Joe. Thanks for coming on, man.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And a lot of topics to get through today, and of course the usual suspects as well. We kicked Matt off the show because the last episode was just not good from him. So I don't know if we'll be having him for a while.
Performance-based podcasting.
Yeah, we got me back on as well. We're just we're trialing, knocking people in and out. But let's kick off with the patch that just came out. It's a little tiny patch, 1.08. Not too many changes, honestly, across the board. The major thing being the Raze Satchel Pack nerf. So another nerf to Raze's Satchel Pack after they said that they didn't... They kind of, I suppose, felt like it wasn't being used how they thought it would when they designed the ability. That they've removed a lot of the damage and it now has a ramp up. So that initially when you use it, it does absolutely bollocks all. It does 15 damage, I think. And then after that, it ramps up to 50 if you leave it, but let's be real, who the hell is leaving it, But
that does sometimes happen, though. Like, you'll occasionally want to throw a satchel just to stop someone coming into that area, and now that they've made it so that you can't kill the blast pack, that is actually a fairly effective deterrent. Like, if you're trying to lock off some small choke point that you don't want to push from behind, you just throw a blast pack there, and it'll, it's a little bit of a deterrent to people.
If you shoot it, it deads it now, doesn't it?
Yes.
So it doesn't just destroy it. So yeah, it's an interesting change. But I've always felt like, we've seen some of the best Raze players in the world, players like Zipan as well, really kind of innovate, I would say, with the way that they were using the satchels, just getting the maximum amount of the kit. But it seems like they purely want it to be kind of, I suppose, a deterrent, something to clear angles, something to use as the mobility.
Yeah. Nice little change, I think, that it no longer does damage to allies. Small change, but it is nice for those situations where you're pushing through a choke and you have players around you and you get in before them with a jump. So, small change, but I like that.
Yeah.
Or ever playing matchmaking.
There you go, Joe.
Or ever playing matchmaking.
Actually just knocking your teammates. I mean, I'm Raze one trick, so I do that all the time anyway. The Guardian got a buff as well. In terms of
Cool. I'm sure it's going to be picked up.
I like
it, but but are people going to use it?
I need to see a comparison video.
But maybe.
I could see, to be honest, I could see it being more significant than people think, because it's down from 2,700 where it was initially to 2,500 now, to 2,500 to 2,400.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like it's now in that range, and not. You can say yes, 100 off, but this does make a difference if you think about the goal to a win on a round is 3,000, right? So it's now in that space. That extra 100 might put it in the space where it's like, okay, I'm seriously thinking about buying this on a round 1 win now. And that could actually be hugely significant because, right now it feels like, it does feel a bit like, okay, if I've won round 1, well, 1, you don't feel in a great situation, right? But 2, basically it's like, okay, well, great, I'm either going to stick with the guns I can pull pistol, mainly if I got a sheriff, right? Or I'm going to go get probably a Spectre, and it's kind of boring. It's like, oh, well, great, I've got this gun now, and if I win the round, they have to really take that on to the next round, blah blah blah. And you don't really have a variety of options with regards. Okay, and if you're the enemy team, okay, they're going to either have a Sheriff or a Spectre, basically. So I feel like putting it into that range where a winning team can buy it on round 1 actually could really open up dynamic with regards to how we see those round 2s play out, I think. So I'm quite interested to see. Obviously, the problem has been just it's not strong enough. But
yeah, perhaps. I still think I think it might need a even slightly more price range, maybe to 2,300 to really start seeing play. I think the only issue I have with it in the early rounds is that it's the type of weapon that at least you would think I wouldn't want to see it against Spectre. Just due to the way the gun actually works. It's not good against SMGs, people that are mobile, right? So
I need to see it being shot. I sent you a video, Kurt, in the channel. and it's the the Korean Valorant channel on YouTube where they do the patch
so good.
comparisons.
Yeah.
they are
They're
so,
so
good.
good,
right?
I haven't watched this
Can
one
they-
yet, so
Can they just translate those into English? Like what? The English team must have those videos somewhere. Like Riot's making them.
You would think, right? I mean, they are absolutely nasty. They're so good. But apparently, this is the norm in Korea with games, is that they just do these comparisons, so you can see the central changes they go through here. But I haven't seen the Guardian changes yet. That will be my kind of indication as well. The money is going to be the biggest factor, obviously, as well. It's like you were saying, Joe. When you come off the back of that first win, that round 1 win, the money situation is like, what do you buy? You buy a Spectre, right? Or maybe if you manage to get 3 kills and you got the $600 from it, then you might.
I mean, the Bulldog
buy a
is also.
rifle.
I think the Bulldog is like the most direct comparison, though.
Yes,
As a
yes, it
2100
is, yeah.
weapon that is also fairly decent at long range with the ADS, where to a similar level to the Guardian, you still got to hit a headshot either way if you're playing against actual rifles. But people don't really like spraying with the Bulldog, so if the recovery time is low enough with the Guardian, which I think we're about to see here, then maybe it could be viable for a little bit more money.
See,
Also, great for wallbanging as well, for like a Sober playing on Ascent or something. There aren't issues.
That is a good point. See, I always see the Guardian being more viable in situations later in the game where you're stretching your money and trying to get a buy-in for a round, where it's the type of gun that I would actually like to use against players who are using rifles later and trying to stretch out my money and potentially get the Guardian over a Bulldog if the credit requirement to get the Guardian is lower, right?
Yeah, I mean, why would you not want just an Ares though as well? If you were playing, I'm thinking back on like Ascent B. If you're playing Sova, why would you not just pick up the Ares buy? I don't know.
Instead of the Guardian?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to retake A. Yeah, Ares is just a
I
nightmare.
feel like it's more for stuff like Split B, stuff like that. That's sort of Split B in a retake scenario.
Right.
Yeah, obviously, with Ascent, you're never giving up the Ares. you're the Odin or whatever. You're keeping that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are definitely places where the wallbang could come into use.
I mean, we'll have to see how it shakes out. I don't really know what I like in terms of that. Another thing, the map rotation changes.
Hallelujah.
Thank God, yeah. I mean, the amount of times that you just have an entire day of playing only Split. I mean, hopefully it's going to be in the past now with this, because they've changed it instead of it being random to pseudo-random. So it's, I mean, we could get into the botanicals of that. There's no such thing as random in computing, but I'm not going to get into the specifics of that. There's only such thing as pseudo-random. So
No, it was true random. There were Riot employees rolling dice and telling you exactly what map was coming up. They have just a whole wing of Riot employees that are sat there rolling dice.
yeah, just deciding what map you get next. Except for the ones when they're watching my stream and they're like, right, we'll put him on Split again. He's tilted, bogged on the phone, just fucking watching it. Yeah, I mean, a good change, just I think for the nature of the game, and they made some observer changes as well in the quality of life. What is this here? Is it just
first one is
huge
so
flashes?
yeah, especially with the 3 breach flashes just blinding all 100,000 blast viewers over and over again. It's a lovely change. Thank you, Riot.
Yeah, this was, I mean, did you see the clip that Zipan posted? And it was actually on the stream as well, where all 6 breach flashes got used on B-bind long because they were counter flashing, right? Which is a very valid strat. So it's like one flash goes out and you're incentivized to reply with your own breach flash. And so there's just 6 of them going off at once, and Zipan's like, just all in his face, can't do a thing.
Yeah, it's the new breach method that we're in. Fucking hell. I was watching some of, I mean, we're going to get into it later, but some of the Liquids VODs when they're running the 7 flashes as well. Yeah, it does get a little bit mental. Here's
yeah,
the
here's
clip
the
of
Zipan
Zipan as
VOD.
well.
Yeah.
This is from his point of view, but this is pretty similar to what all the spectators saw as well.
Oh my god.
And then he dies.
I like that, man. Well, they really went all out with this one, didn't they?
How long is this?
Full production value with this meme, bro.
The FBX budget out of
okay.
control.
So, it's not indirectly in this patch here, but one thing that we have been seeing, we've seen a tournament now, especially with the Blast Invitational being played. What do we make of Sage as a character? Because she got gutted in the not the latest patch, but the previous patch to that. So almost every single aspect of her kit got gutted completely. And I just watched the recent finals between G2 and FPX, at least some of the maps, because I didn't have time otherwise. But the maps that I did see, when G2 were playing the Sage, it felt like it was just a weaker option in comparison to some of the alternatives. I don't know if you guys get the same impression, but I can only see it being used in some very niche situational maps. Maybe just on Split, honestly, just because of the basis of the way Split plays.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they were opting specifically for David P. He was running the Sage on Ascent for all maps. And we did see Xiao playing the Sage on Split, which on paper seems to make a lot more sense, as you said. No? Do you guys agree with that?
I mean,
I'll go on, Joe.
I'm saying with David P and Sage, that's kind of just a David P thing. The way he plays that map is he loves to lurk that mid position, and it just happens Sage has the best kit essentially for doing that. So that's really just a specific thing to him essentially. But yeah, I mean, something I will say, it actually really annoys me because. So the particular change I think that's gutted her is the 60% change, right? Or 60 health change.
Yes.
So it was 100 before, down to 60. And it really annoyed me because this was something I was saying like during beta. I was, okay, if you want to fix Sage, the starting place you have to go from is to get her down to, I think I ever said 60 or 66. It's like, or 60 or 60% of missing health. Because at that point you make it so, because half the problem was, okay, if you get shot by Sage and you take a lot of damage and you're basically dead and you get healed up, you can still take 2 bullets before dying from a rifle. If you change it to 60%, you don't have that problem. If you just go down to nothing and you get healed by the Sage, you're just going to die in one shot basically, right? But the fact that they changed that last was really frustrating because I feel like they should have changed that first, and then they wouldn't have had to nerf the rest of the kit so heavily. I think you would have found that Sage would have become a lot more manageable a lot more quickly, in my view.
I think that, I mean, if you look at the statistics of her usage, they were already going fairly heavily down anyway, as people realized that Sage's compositions were very viable and had kind of learned how to play those, because there is always some kind of meta inertia where people start, you know, they think that Sage is a must pick, so they learn how to play the game with Sage, and it takes some relearning process for you to learn the best ways of playing without her. So we were already starting to get into that territory with some of the nerfs and relearning that people had done. And now in the Blast Invitational, which is our only real data point after this nerf, she's down to 16% playtime, with the majority of the play, honestly, coming from Ascent, coming from G2. Now, that's only 4 teams. It's not a big sample size. It's not easily readable, but I would think that that's going to occur on everywhere else to an even higher degree, because like you say, Joe, it really is only David P that plays the Sage in that kind of way. Even if you look at how other Sages played on Ascent, and it wasn't even that popular a map for Sage anyway, none of the others were playing aggressively with their slow orbs in B main, taking B main control. Basically, the only other teams that play for B main control use the Sova Dart to be able to do it. So there aren't really any other teams that use their Sage with aggressive walls and aggressive slows that feel confident enough to take those duels, that even play the map in that way. Now, I love it. I think that's a great way of playing Ascent, because it allows you to take aggressive control over B, whereas most teams in NA, they just into gelato over and over again, which is
so much
less. It's so much more one-dimensional than G2's style, which is one of the reasons that I think they're the best team in the world on Ascent. But I don't think you'll see anybody else do it, and they don't run it anywhere else.
I will say, I was watching, that was one of the last maps I watched, was G2 versus FPX on Ascent. I watched that, and I watched the final map on Split, which was just pure fucking anarchy towards the end. It was absolute anarchy. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing, but I wanted to get a good feel for the Sage comps in particular, and FPX, and I think a lot of other teams should as well at this point, have a very good read. If you see a Sage on Ascent, you kind of know what's gonna happen. If you hear the wall in B main, you know they're peeking into the window. If you know to watch out as well, the common spot being trying to get your Opper on a high ground position to watch the cross into Cat.
Yeah.
Like with that wall, and also David P, like you were saying, Joe, he likes to play the cross with the wall behind the wall, just so that only his head's peeking up where he can hold it with an op just straight down mid. Like it's. If you've already got a solid read and you know how they're going to be playing around with the Sage, I feel like you've inherently taken away every single advantage that you've really had going for you by picking that character in the first place, by picking that agent. And in some ways, you'd be better off by playing the Breach. Because, I mean, why would you not play the Breach at the moment? With one extra flash, with the amount of utility he's got, with his stuns being buffed and knocking people out of scopes, it just doesn't quite make sense to me when I was seeing other teams play Ascent in this particular way.
I really like it, though, because I think that something you're underrating there is the fact that in order to find where David P is using his wall, because it could be, if we're talking defensively, it could be at the back of mid in order to get that peak. It could be in pizza in order to boost Mixwell up to be able to watch mid. And then on offense, it can be in B main, or it can be in order to watch the catwalk at the beginning. In order to find that out, you normally have to peak one of those angles, and there's going to be an off angle watching you. So it puts a huge amount of pressure on you to be able to scout the usage of the wall without dying to the person that is peeking on the wall. And unless your Sova is in the right place at the right time to be able to catch that with a recon dart or a drone or something, it's still pretty unpredictable playing against the Sage wall. So I think that combined with B main control is pretty good.
Yeah, there was a scenario that I had in my mind when I was talking about that though, and it was when G2 were trying to push into B main, and they had Shao was playing right back side of Roman, and he called to the day at wall. So immediately Angel knew to just peek it, look at the window, pre-fire it, and he killed Mixwell instantly. And it's like, this is the kind of reads and adaptations that teams are going to do against you if they know what you're going for, essentially. And if they hear that wall sound, they're going to know what to look for. Those kind of... That's just stuff that you learn from prep. That's not even like mid-game adaptations. That's stuff that you just know from watching G2. So I do feel as time goes on, like the Breach would be a more flexible pick, because they're going to be a little bit too one-dimensional in the way that they're running it. Could be proven wrong by that. I mean, they did get absolutely trounced on that map by FPX, and I think that was a big part of it. But yeah, that's my take on it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think... Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I feel like G2 have got away with a lot more than they should have on Ascent over the last 2-3 tournaments. Like I think if you go back and look at it, Bonk in Mandatory Cup played them probably the best of anybody, and then Bonk actually Bonk played them worse. I mean, both statistically they played them worse, but I think even in terms of how they approach it, they played them worse going into the next couple of tournaments. I feel like they naturally should be the best Ascent team in the world, but I do think that they're going to have to make that adaptation because, it's weird. I don't know why they haven't been tested really on this map, because what they do particularly with regards to the B long play, is very, very predictable, and it has surprised me that people haven't exploited it until now.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of shifted this conversation into more G2, but I mean, do you guys think there is a place for Sage, or do you think that she just, at this point, she has been nerfed into the gutter, she needs a buff, or what?
I think it's interesting to see the game without her for a while, but I mean, they said that they're opening up that niche for more healers to come in, is what they said. Yeah. So that's the next step,
dangerous.
Probably.
Yeah, very well could be. Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see a few more Sageless tournaments, or not Sageless, but tournaments with Sage on these current. That's right. I'd like to see it play out a bit more. And I do feel she still has viability to split of all the maps. I think that she can work there. But I would like to see a few more tournaments before potentially making the call to maybe readjust some of the nerfs to the other parts of her kit, specifically.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point to move on then. We can start talking about a little bit about the pro scene as well, because 100 Thieves. I'm surprised you guys didn't talk about this last week.
It's because it didn't happen.
It didn't happen last week?
No,
it
came after. It came the day after.
The day after?
The day after.
Yeah.
I mean, typical. 100 Thieves have signed Steel. The Steel's back in the game after obviously being barred from CSGO, and he's been moving around from game to game to game. He's ended up now onto 100 Thieves' Valorant team. They haven't announced any other players, have they? There's rumors going around.
No, I mean, they have announced the first two of Hiko and... why is his name
Nitro and Steel.
Yeah.
But they haven't announced front two.
I like this pickup a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he had moved to a couple different games, but that was very brief. For the most part, Steel, despite being banned from the ability to play in Majors, the most important tournament in CSGO, he's still been competing in that game for years. He's been competing in that game while not being on teams that were even getting sponsors in MDL. Like, I think it was
team beat.
At some point, well, I was going to say, in 2019, he played in MDL for the longest time with what is now the Chaos team. And they were just an unsponsored team called Ben's Anime Team. And they played for a very long time with no sponsor. And I mean, he's like a true competitor, right? He was just playing that whole time, knowing he can't even play in the majors, still grinding away in MDL. And then with the latest iteration of that team, which is Chaos, he was developing this young star talent, Leaf and Zeppa, the two real upcoming NA talents, and there's no end game for him in CS. But despite that, he was still going hard and trying to improve the players on his team, trying to get good results, which is really admirable. And I think he's just like, he is the truest competitor to me. So I just like having him in the scene. It's cool.
What was the last game he played in CS? Can you scroll across? Was it against 100 Thieves?
That wasn't the very last one, but yeah, they did notoriously
ones?
beat 100 Thieves.
What was his team called? Chaos Esports?
Yeah,
bro, because there was that clip of Nadeshot saying, "Who the fuck is Chaos Esports?" Because it beat his CS team. And now he's picking up the steal, I guess.
But I was just going to say, I'd love to see him do a similar thing in Valorant where he actually gets this young new talent and develops them in the way he was doing with his last CS team, which was working wonderfully for that org, which is, it was like a smaller org, not a huge budget. It was just developing these upcoming players. I don't see why we cannot do the same thing now in Valorant with Thieves, and that's what I'd like to see. At this point, they have established vets. It's
they need
young
some
talent.
crack kids in there as well.
Fortnite kids.
Yeah, so some Fortnite kids like Zipan, just try and clone him and put two of them on the team. If anyone wants a really good insight into Steel's thought process as well, he was recently on the Valoranting podcast from Off Peak, and he did like a 20-30 minute interview with them, kind of discussing a bit of what he's been doing in the downtime, or in like some of his downtime from CS, and why he got heavily into Valorant, that kind of stuff. And something that he was saying is just, he's been frustrated watching the top scene, because, especially in NA. I don't think from what he was saying, I don't think he's watched like that many of the games from the other regions extensively. But he was just frustrated with the lack of creative thinking from the pros at the top NA scene, which I love that. And from hearing like the tidbits of what he was talking about, it does seem like he's got fresh ways of thinking that aren't just cemented in CSGO knowledge. I mean, the guy's played at a top level in PUBG, he's played MOBAs casually at a top level. I think he played StarCraft casually at a top level as well. And I think he's just a very creative gamer, and I'm excited to see what this team comes up with, because it would be very easy to get stuck in your ways with three old established names from CS, but I don't think they're going to fall into that same trap.
You gotta see him pick up two young guns, like you were saying. I think you gotta see him pick up some young, moldable talent you can work around, like what Immortals have kind of done with Dicey, just having this up and comer, even if it's not purely from Valorant, and just bring somebody up like that. Anyone with some raw potential, teach them the fundamentals from the CS background, and then, I mean, I could definitely see some success coming out of this roster now. It is a little bit disappointing that. There haven't been any future announced NA tournaments. It's like...
No, I believe that's the last Ignition tournament, so we're just waiting for the next bunch of them from Riot.
Yeah, it's a bit annoying because there's so many unknowns currently with the NA scene about how teams are performing, like FaZe, I do need some juice pretty soon.
I do like that though, Brent, because if the next tournaments came tomorrow, 100 Thieves would be incentivized to rush their roster creation. Yeah, or they just wouldn't be ready anyway. I mean, I don't think they would rush their roster creation after fucking it up last time. But, I mean, I hope not. I think that break is actually pretty good for us to see, like, the next evolution of the NA scene.
Okay. Alright, let's shift it over to one of the most egregious pickups in recent history of Valorant. I cannot believe that this occurred, to be honest. And I might be throwing a little bit too much shade at their way, but Crashies and Food moved from T1 over to Envy. And is it Calypso and was it...
Calypso and
Akis? Yeah. Calypso and Akis benched. Now, there's nothing concrete about this, but there is the recent MDL match-fixing scandals that's going on. There's a bunch of players currently being investigated, as far as I'm aware. I don't. They said that this is directly not because of that, because it's a very dangerous.
No, they said that
They didn't.
Akis
They
was
said-
to do with that.
They gave, yeah.
Oh,
they said-
really?
Yes. All they
Yep.
said. There's. I don't know if you have it, Kurt, but there's a tweet from Envy _
I'll try and
Tailspin
find
on
it.
Twitter, where he said his excuse for getting rid of Akis was kind of funny. It was like, well, we have a 6-man roster now, so Akis doesn't have a place with our 5. Which is like, okay, so you cut him because he isn't good. So they got rid of Akis. And then they just didn't give a reason.
They didn't give. Oh, I thought they gave a reason for both of them.
No, they
Both players were
specifically
moved-
said as well.
Yeah, they said both players were
Removed for unrelated reasons
Unrelated
and
reasons.
just gave one for Akis.
Which means that Akis wasn't removed for the that Calypso wasn't removed for the same reason, right? Like if you read between the lines here, the two were removed for different reasons.
Right.
Akis was because they invested in other talent. Calypso is for a different reason.
Such a
now, if you read
hilarious-
between the lines, they haven't said it outright, but probably the most likely
Bro, that's
reason
some
here
big
is
brain
because
shit.
of the NBL.
And also, I mean, even just to go further on that, there were a bunch of tweets from all the Envy players just gassing up how good Calypso was after removing Calypso and how great it was to play with him, and he's so cracked and all that type of shit
Yeah.
after removing him, which, I mean, makes sense. He was a god-tier player in NA, I think. He was really good. It wouldn't have made any sense to have benched him, especially not... I mean, they were on the upswing. They were
Yeah,
only
Calypso
performing
was one of the best
better and
players on
better,
that team.
and he was I think he was the best on that team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's, you know...
I think it's
It's a rough
You can't know
situation,
that,
though,
but-
for Envy because,
of course.
I would love to know what happened from the internal, stuff here. But under the assumption that Calypso, they felt like he had to be removed for some kind of drama that's gone on. If we're running with that assumption, presumably they tried to attract some talent, but maybe Crashies and Food both wanted to come in. I don't know. It seems like a bit of a messy situation for a team that was trying to establish themselves. And actually get better and better, they've now had to kind of pick apart, change roles, most likely as well, because Food
FNS
is
is
now
moving, I
he's going
think,
to be
off of
Roman player.
FNS. I think is moving off of the Cypher for Crashes.
That would make sense. I would say that. I mean, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I
mean,
suppose.
yeah, it's either one or the other. I can't remember the exact specifics of it, but yeah, and we do have to stress as well that it is purely just rumors that Calypso is involved in the MDL match fixing
Yes.
business, because you can't just make an accusation like that. It's also just it's a poor coincidence of timing with this news coming out and also Calypso being benched that people are jumping to these conclusions.
Well, listen,
but this
Brett,
kind of shit can.
If it isn't anything to do with the MDL stuff, and the organization has a responsibility to come out and say that it isn't, because that's
Yes.
such an obvious
Yeah.
coincidence and connection of the dots that they're setting him up to get a fuck ton of
Yeah.
backlash.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah,
was
very
actually like, oh, the guy just didn't turn up to scrims or he fell asleep once. Like if it was
Still
something,
raging.
if it was something pointless, then that's on the org to actually come out and say that, because they're just setting him up for a fall. If not.
Yeah, you cannot put these players' careers in the line, in my opinion. I think it's a little bit irresponsible. But the timing and the way that they've announced this, it doesn't particularly bode well.
So what do we think about the pickups here? Well, Brent, do you want to start? You had a fiery intro to this
Dude,
topic.
I think
You wanna
that this is
give 'em the
super
sauce?
questionable. For one, the T1, all of the problems internally, obviously you can point to various stuff, but all of the leaked DMs were always Food and Crashies shit talking their team, which is just
Wait, what do you mean by always? Didn't that only happen once?
happens 3 times, I think.
Did you really?
It was either twice or 3 times, and it was Food and Crashes in separate occasions.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I mean, I
But
wasn't aware
I think
of
it was
that.
it was Food. Listen, I mean, it happened so long ago, and I don't give a fuck about drama. But this happened. I think one of the excuses was that Food was just relaying what someone else had said, and it didn't come from him.
Mm.
He was just repeating what somebody else said in a Steam community, whatever it is, Steam message. But yeah, it was two separate instances of this kind of shit talking going on internally. Those are not the kind of players you want in your team that are just, I don't know, just snaky behavior. You know what I mean? Like that is, I don't like that. You don't want your teammates to be like, you have a bad game, you have a bad scrim. You want players with that kind of team play attitude that know that it takes a bit of hard work to get to a working point. You don't want them fucking behind the scenes just, messaging other people like it's high school. I think that's such a negative.
I think that's also some of the structure that a coach has to put in place as well. Like, you have to have confidence and trust in your coach that if you come directly to them, they'll sort stuff out rather than having to.
Kurt's found one of the messages here. So there's Crashy's. I think this was the latest one.
But no, this was the only one that I've ever seen. I'm surprised that it was another thing. But yeah, this is the one where Food said that he was relaying something that someone else said, right?
This is Crashy's.
Sorry, he's talking to Crashies.
No,
this is Food talking to Crashies.
Is this Food talking to Crashies?
This is, yeah.
Okay, well, maybe I'm talking
This
out
was
my ass.
the known one, though. This was the main one, which is the why they got rid of Skadoodle. He had poor communication. Even though clearly the problems with T1 extended to miles beyond Skadoodle not talking enough, clearly. Like, there are far more problems than that. But
just to summarize, instead of just talking out my ass about drama that I don't understand, I'll just talk about the pickups. I don't think it makes sense. It's already been announced that Food is going to be moving to take over the Smoker role for Calypso. It's a role I thought that they would put him in, but I don't think it's going to be a good one unless he proves me otherwise. Crashies as well. I mean, Food and Crashies, I think, they were pretty underwhelming on T1. I don't think it's a hot take to say that.
I think it is. I think Crashies was the best player on that team. I think that
Really?
I think so, too.
Yeah.
You think so
that
as well?
in his Cypher role, I think that he was able to actually do a lot of work for a team that didn't have very much structure. I think that guy's got potential. Like, he could be a good player on a team that has more structure, a team like Envy. That's why I think it's a good idea to move FNS off his role, because he's a shot caller. He can build the system a bit more around him, but you want to put your new player Crashies on his comfort role, on the place where you've already seen he can have success on the Cypher.
I think T1 looked way better with Brax on the Cypher.
I think it was pretty. I mean, Brax was all right in that role as well, but I think there were just so many other problems with the way that the roles worked out that I don't think it was because Crashies
a lot of
was
overlapping
bad.
problems. I mean, at this point, what are we even arguing over? I mean, when was the last time that T1 played? It was
Pop Flash.
Pop Flash, early rounds, getting knocked
Easy
out.
game, Jet. But I am okay with Food on that team not being a duelist. I think he has probably far more potential on Smoke than he's showing on a duelist in the previous 3 T1 tournaments. At least on the Smoke role, you would think inherently he won't be putting himself in those awkward suicide angle positions where he's just trying to out-aim 7 guys at once. I mean, he'll be actually playing more passive game inherently, which I think would be a good thing for him because he has great mechanical skill, but when he was on the duelist roles, he was just playing at far too an aggressive pace, especially for how passive T1 were. But I'm actually okay with that. I just sort of worry about what they're going to do with FNS and Crashies, because I was really liking FNS on Cypher. I'm kind of disappointed to see him off that, especially in the previous tournament. He looked really good. In the Pop Flash, he was going off. So I would have liked to have seen him on that still. But Crashies is a really good Cypher, so if you're going to replace FNS with anyone, I'm fine with that. And then maybe if they continue to run the Killjoy like they were in Pop Flash as well, maybe he can slot into that. I mean, I think getting rid of Akis, fine. He was never like a weak link on that team to me, but he was certainly their lowest performer. I think that's certainty, right?
Yeah. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're underrating Crashies and Food a little bit. Like, when I've seen them, I think they've been really impressive, and I don't think you can, in terms of like role by role stuff, I'm not sure you can judge because T1 has just been chaotic.
Yeah,
so,
and they're also moving roles as well. So
yeah,
shifting the roles around for a couple of the players. I think that's fair. All right, I've been beaten down. I'll back off away from my Crashies and Food a shite point, and we can move on to talk about Bonk a little bit. Bonk have lost some of their key players, actually. I think is that an understatement? Here's the thing: I don't follow EU as closely as I do NA. I mean, Joe, you'd be the man to ask here. What do you make of these bonk changes?
They have literally lost probably their best player in Safe. Like you can make the case either way between Safe and Yasin, but I think it's probably Safe, and that's a huge loss for them because, I mean, this is the thing in terms of the perception of Safe in EU, and I think the perception of Safe in EU, particularly among the Swedish teams, is that Safe 6 months down the line, if you wanted to make a bet on who would the best player in Valorant be, in EU Valorant be, and you're not allowed to pick artists, let's say, it would probably be Safe, because I mean he's one of that class of players where they were incredibly good in CS, but they got a VAC ban when they were like 13, and they couldn't play CS because.
Oh, is that what happened to it?
Yeah, from what I've been told by players and coaches in that sort of Swedish scene, he would most likely be on a tier 1 CS team if he hadn't got VAC'd. Like he's that good.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's a huge loss for them, and Aaron, I think, is also actually quite a big loss because I mean I like to make a joke about it that he's the 5th best Cypher in Sweden because you've got you've got Bonka, you've got Meadow, you've got Fern, and I say the 4th one is Zydish, which is Aaron's other handle, but he is legitimately quite good. Like I think there's a loss for them, but Safe is a really big one, and I've not been convinced at all with Draken watching he's played a lot of little tournaments in Valorant with various rotating teams, and he's not really impressed me at any point. And from what I can see, he will be taking over Safe's role, to be clear.
Really? Okay. So that's the really interesting part to me because I haven't been clued up on Draken. I'm not delving down into like the I guess like 8th to 20th teams that much in Europe. Normally like to stick up at the top because the bottom teams cycle their players around so much. So I'm not really familiar with Draken at all. I assumed he was coming in as a replacement for Aaron to be able to come in and maybe play the 1-for-1 Cypher replacement, but you don't think that's the case?
No, if they were going to do it, or if that was, I mean, Bonka was probably at least top 3 Cypher in close beta in Europe. Bonka is sick on Cypher, so if they were going to move anybody to Cypher, it would have been Bonka. But no, Draken is coming in like for Safe in terms of that primary ult role and in terms of probably the agent choice as well.
So for anyone that's not really aware of Safe's style, that guy plays every hero. It's absurd. Now, I don't know whether there's some kind of record for the most heroes played across your career or something, but I think it's possible that Safe would get it. I can't think of another pro player that plays that much. He is the only guy, by the way, that plays Viper at a top level repeatedly. And his Viper gameplay on Split, I think you can see, like, he's got 12 games recorded on Viper.
That's Lord's name is this.
And his stats are absurd because not only has he specialized in it and his teams have specialized in it when he plays on Split, they have really good strats for it, but they also, this guy's aim is unbelievably good. I mean, we are talking rifle aim like up there with the absolute best in the world, and it's somebody that hasn't had a chance to play on a team that's really gotten to the top level yet. I'm a little bit surprised that he's rated as like one of the players that could be the best in the entirety of the EU scene, but not that surprised because he does seem ridiculously important for their success in terms of his flexibility and what he brings to the team. He's like the centerpiece of some of their strategies, and also just in terms of their fragging power.
The way you've described him to me, you've sold him to me as basically a non-one-trick Zipan.
A little bit, honestly.
Yeah. In terms of just the raw rifling, I mean, like I said, my EU knowledge is lacking just because it's been a while since I think Bonk played, right? Last time they played, was it in the Best of One tournament? That was going on?
I can't remember the name of the tournament, but it was the one previous Blast.
It's unfortunate because the Blast one was only 4 teams.
It was. I can't remember the name, but it was the one previous Blast where they did beat NIP, right? And then they played G2 in the finals and O2.
I think that was the Mandatory Cup.
No. It was LVL Clash.
Yes, the Level Clash 2. I think there's an argument as well that Bonk should have been invited to the Blast Invitational. Now, maybe they declined some invite because they were revamping their team or something, but they are arguably the 4th best team, or were arguably the 4th best team, above NIP, and maybe even, you could debate whether they were there or whether it was Liquid that was there in that 3rd place spot as well. So this is probably going to be an enormous drop for them. If they're unfortunate to have not found organization to be able to sign under before losing Safe.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, in my opinion, they were the third best team in Europe. They were ahead of Liquid, ahead of NiP. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, they were undergoing some, because also in addition to Safe and Aaron, they also they've changed coaches now twice in about a month, because they removed Salah, who was their they didn't remove him, he left, but he left about 6 weeks ago, and they brought in Emil from Fabrican, and Emil's also gone now. Emil's actually gone with Safe to NiP, it looks like. So, well, Emil is publicly on NiP, but if Safe isn't publicly on NiP, but yeah.
I mean, that moves us on nicely. Did you want to say something, Wyatt?
Well, yeah, I just, my question would be, and maybe you know this, Joe, but who exactly are dictating these moves right now? Because you would think that Bonk would have wanted to keep their 5 together and keep moving forward, because we've seen them only improve at this point, and I was pretty disappointed to see this news. I was really enjoying watching the team and seeing how far they were coming from a couple months ago.
I mean, my understanding is that it's probably they couldn't get an org issue, and there's only so long, because they've been around for a long time now.
Yeah.
I mean, to be clear, it's the eponym is right here, right? It is Bonka who is the captain of this team, and it's Bonka and Yasin who were generally driving most of the decisions. But yeah, I mean, I think they just hit a point of exhaustion, unfortunately, because I mean, they have boot camps as well. They actually are one of the few teams who don't have an org who have boot camp in Europe. They did that a couple months ago, so it's been a while coming, you know.
At the same time, though, Wyatt, if I'm an organization and I'm trying to make a top team, I would not have signed Bonk in their entirety. And that might sound like a bit of a weird thing, because they were, you know, 3rd, 4th best team in Europe right now. But because there aren't that many organizations already involved, you could probably build an even better team than Bonk. Like, if you mix around some of the pieces and took their best, there's potential for super teams to come and still challenge the likes of G2 and FPX at that level in terms of like their fragging power across the board. So I can see it from the organization's point of view as well, that they don't just want to wholesale pick up Bonk, and then those players, they can't force Safe to not just take a paycheck with NiP.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, but I think it's just my soul and my heart hurt thinking about Yasin and Safe parting ways. It's very unfortunate. It was an exciting, dominant duo.
We've already kind of moved on to the next topic, which is the fact that NiP, is this confirmed? I know it was rumored.
This is a double report from Halo of Thoughts and also Nell, which I think NIP have also announced or are about to announce.
Last time I checked, NiP hadn't announced it, but I mean, Nell is never wrong, basically, on this stuff. He knows these French players, right? So I would be shocked if this wasn't.
I heard a knee slapper once.
There you go. Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, by the time this video is out and starting to go live, the news might be already out. So. Who knows? Yeah. We often.
I mean, Nell also said in his report that the reason he had delayed it and the reason that Halo got the report out first was because he had been working with NiP to like schedule it alongside their announcement or something. So it would be very surprising if it wasn't true.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds like a Halo thing to do. To jump the gun a little bit. So this has confirmed this to a degree, and. What do you make of this then? Because NIP is a team that has been struggling kind of almost at this gatekeeping level in EU, where they've been kind of just at the level where they've been unable to break further forward in tournaments, but just barely scraping by. What do you make of them removing Heap? Because Heap was one of the central figures of this team back when the team was literally called Heap Heap Heap. Like it's interesting to me that they've opted to remove him and Theroff as well, to be fair, because I mean, I watched a game recently. It wasn't magic on my screen, but it wasn't egregious. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Key thing to note before we move forward, I just wanted to say, though, yeah, you do remember it from the Hip 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 team, but NIP, from my understanding, the team was originally formed. They contacted Lucker and Rhyme, and they put the team together from there.
Right.
So they seem to be the ones doing the decision making.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're doing the decision making, but it was definitely a case of Lucker and Rhyme were the first two signed, and then they were looking to essentially add free to that, and so they went with those boys.
I always found the creation of this team to be a little strange anyway, because the roles didn't seem to have particularly been thought out. And even on Hip Hip Hip, I found Hip to be a bit of a player that was he's been the entry role, essentially. He's been the entry main fragger, playing the Reyna, playing the Raze, playing these kind of things. Now, recently, if you've only caught their recent matches, you might be saying, Josh, what the hell are you talking about? He plays Killjoy. But that's been a recent change. He's primarily been this kind of entry big fragging player. And I just fundamentally don't think that that's a good idea for him for that to be his role. Hip isn't somebody that lights the world on fire with some crazy aim. He's not somebody that has the like CS knowledge to be able to pair anyway. He seems like he's slowly getting a little more and more out of his depth as the game progresses. I think that a role change for him was required to be able to maybe recapture some of the energy, and then it just wasn't really working for NIP. Like, you can't compare Hip to any of the other big primary fraggers for any of these other teams that are playing the entry roles. He just falls completely flat. And while I still think there is a future for Hip in the European scene, I don't think it's on those roles anymore.
Yeah, I mean, let's put a point of clarification here, right? He's always been the entry role. He's never really been a big fragger. If you look at his numbers, he has been pretty bad for pretty much most tournaments he's played. I'm sure there's one or two where I think there's one or two early after the introduction of Reyna where he got the agent a lot quicker than everybody else and has some quite nice games. But for the most part, he's been extremely underwhelming. I mean, the thing I think is really weird about it is, like, I think Nip has screwed up here. I mean, but this is the thing. Nip have been so ridiculously impatient in Valorant. It's like I made a meme like today where it's just the ride never ends meme, and it's just all the players that they've kicked because I mean, this is the thing. People forget they got rid of Zipan in beta. Then
he was playing Sage for them at the time, though, wasn't he?
I don't think it was Sage, but he was.
Oh, wasn't
it? It wasn't Raze. It wasn't Raze because
he wasn't playing entry.
No. So they got obviously Zipan went. They got rid of Bonker and Yasin, who obviously have both proven that it wasn't really about them. Because I mean, to be fair, Yasin always looked good. I think there was a time where you could say, is Bonker one of those players actually like Hip, where he's not going to be able to adapt to this game because obviously came in very early. He's a former world champion in Paladins. But I think time has proven that he is. I think he will stick around in this game. But anyway, they got rid of him. They've not been patient enough with these rosters, and I kind of get it, and I kind of don't, because I kind of get it from the perspective of, okay, well, there's going to be a lot of player turnover this early in beta, blah blah blah. That's fine, but I kind of don't from the perspective of, well, you spent long enough. Like, they spent weeks and weeks and weeks deciding on the final three for this team. And they spent weeks before that, obviously, thinking about, okay, do we get lucky getting run? You had enough time to make a more informed roster choice than this. And I think particularly, I mean, obviously, Kreia is the big name of the bunch, fine, whatever. But I feel like the only way this was going to work was with the French free and with because with a full multinational team, the communication can be so difficult. I don't think it's going to work that way. Like, that's a real big concern, particularly with the players. I mean, they're now looking at what? I mean, Safe, obviously Safe, and Chihuahua.
Yeah, he's the guy on trial.
Yeah, who has played? He's played a little bit in Western European teams, but he's most of his success was on worse players, which was obviously a CIS team. So I don't know how well that's good. I think there's a lot of things they're not really taking into account here, and I feel like, okay, you can second guess the decision to go for this free in the first place. I thought it was a pretty decent roster, but kicking them, and particularly kicking them in a way where it's just like, okay, we're kicking them this early and being like, okay, we're just going to keep one of the French players and we get rid of the other. I think that's a huge mistake. I mean, also I should point out here, Fearoff, from what I was told, was the IGL, at least on Hip Hip Hip. So they've got rid of IGL as well. Yeah,
that's the Fearoth change is the one that really is strange to me, because Fearoth's a very experienced player that was apparently teaching Hip a lot about just like CS fundamentals. He was pretty much like the second fragger on the team and always seemed to do a pretty decent job of it. Could secondary AWP if they needed him to as well. And he seemed like he fit his role fairly well. So it kind of seems like they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater here as well. Instead of making small incremental changes, they're just saying, oh, fuck it, it's a Nip shuffle again.
Yeah. What-
It's
what-
almost
would a lot
like
of
the
these
organization
changes-
has too high expectations.
Were these changes made before Emil came in as a coach?
These changes were made. Well, I mean, he came in about I think 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So these would have been made.
These
after
would have been
that
made
tournament.
most likely from Emil coming in, making these adjustments.
I don't think Emil would have made the adjustments though.
You don't think so? If the thing that we're complaining about is the fact that NiP have just been acting on a whim and making unstructured decision making, and we've come to the conclusion that Heap never really performed particularly well. Theroff is a little bit weird because, like you said, he was the caller, so that's a bit of a weird change, right? And also from watching his gameplay, I didn't really see a problem with it. It seemed quite okay across the board. But I mean, is this a bad thing that they've made these adjustments?
Probably so early on, I think. I mean, if you could just one for one, like for like, replace Safe and Hip and see what that was like with Emil added in and make small incremental changes, I think that would have been enormous for them. Like getting somebody like Safe in on this team is huge, but now you've almost like got rid of all of the development that you had made as a team. There will probably be role changes as well. I'm not 100% on that, but like, is Rhyme gonna stay being on the Cypher? Yeah, they change roles all the time as well. It feels like a problem where they just haven't set the fundamentals in place, and every time you recycle a roster, you have to start back again at the fundamentals in terms of what roles are people playing, not just in terms of their agents, but in terms of like the actual role that you're playing. Are you lurking? Are you entering? Are you doing whatever?
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, the funny thing about Ryan, by the way, I'm pretty sure he's number 2 in the most agents played because he has 8 agents played in competition.
Farewell.
Yeah, he's also incredibly flexible. Like, Rhyme is one of the most underrated players, I think, as well in the European scene. People don't really talk about him very much, but the guy's very, very smart and able to pick up a bunch of different agents. He seems like one of those players that's good, but has gotten very unlucky. Not in terms of the people that he's played with, but the system that he's played in. They've never really figured it out, and he's always the fill guy.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I feel like that suits him. Like, he's not a guy who's going to suddenly. I mean, I might be wrong, but I don't think he's ever going to be like a superstar player. I mean, the reference I always use, I call him the James Milner of Valorant. Like, that is kind of his thing, right? So.
I'd love to get that reference, but I never watched the Premier League, and I don't know if I ever will. I know he's a British footballer. That's it.
Yeah, I giggled. I don't know me sports either. I was pretending. I was like, yeah, that reference. Yeah, of course. I understand. Anyway,
We've spent too much time in America, man.
I know.
Way too much time.
Let's talk then instead about the Blast Invitational. We've been mentioning it this entire time. It was the most recent major tournament that we've seen. From an EU perspective, there are only 4 teams that are invited, and I suppose we can start with the team that we've been briefly mentioning. Just a deep dive on NIP. But Liquid is one of the teams that have come out. Liquid have had an interesting sort of couple of months, I guess, in the EU scene, because it obviously started out as Fish 1, 2, 3 when it was Ardis. They were the dominant team at the time. They lose Ardis. Okay, how the hell do we recover from this? They managed to get Scream, probably one of the best riflers. It makes an argument for the best rifler in Europe currently. It's a hard ask because Europe has a ton of good riflers. But generally speaking, they've made it work, and they've been comparable with the top dogs. But this most recent tournament showing, they came out. They must have stolen Krusty's crack pipe from the Overwatch scene, because they were coming out with these no smoke comps, and they were trying to make it work. And to be fair, I can kind of read that. I think some of you are going to be quite upset at the compositions they were running, but I'm going to attempt to play devil's advocate.
I am ready to defend them. I'm ready to defend them.
I was ready to defend
them.
I was watching it and I was like, I can see the potential of this, but does anybody want to just first dissect what the fuck they were doing?
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the funny thing is, I will defend the comps and I won't defend the team. I think Liquid are awful, and I think they're set up to
really.
Basically, yeah, I really don't think they're very good, because I mean the main thing is the screen pickup was not, because the thing that made them so good in Besa was just that Ardis was a transformative player with the op. He completely changed the way that you could play the entire map. It's like, okay, great, we have 5v4 every single round. On defense, we have an entire site that they can't go into. And Scream's a good player, but Scream isn't aggressive like that, and Scream is not an op player like that. And they've really struggled to, and they've basically gone from being a one-op team in a meta where nobody was really, like, very few players were really able to use the op effectively in close baser, to a no-op team in a meta where plenty of teams now are happy running double op, and that's made it really difficult for them. And that's why you've got the million blinds comp, right? Because the smokes don't. It doesn't work. Like this is the thing. They're not a team that really knows how to make the smokes work very well. With regards to that, they want to get into rifle range of you, right?
Yeah.
And the easiest way to do that is just to blind you a million times, because obviously you can kind of. I mean, I think that's the easiest comp to make. You can kind of walk around. You can skirt around the smoke. If a blind's coming your way, you could attempt. I guess you could technically attempt to dodge it in terms of, oh, I'm just gonna look down, etc. But in real terms, no, you're having to move. You're having to move against a blind.
Yeah, that's the theory. That's the theory behind the comp, right? Is that it gives you these tiny windows of opportunity to use with the flashes. Like smokes give you much longer time to act, take positioning. That's the whole reason why smokes are very good, just to cordon off the map in that sort of manner. But flashes are very much brief moments of map control that you can gain at a moment at a time. I actually really like the comp, and I really like Liquid as well. And I don't think that they have been too hurt by the fact that they don't have the primary AWP in the form of Artist. I thought they were really going to struggle, but they've showcased that they can make it work. It's a bit like the way the Sentinels play, where they're primarily based around rifling. And I think you have to be very disciplined around it, because if you end up just dry peeking corners into Oppers, then of course you're going to get punished. But I think Liquid have showcased that they are talented enough to be able to play at a very high level, quite coordinated. They have a lot of lovely set plays, and they are very good with the I don't know how to really describe it. The microaggression, I suppose, in a moment. They can set up a play with two people who are up and adapt on the fly to whoever's up in a situation, and they work off of each other's utility very, very well. I like that about Liquid, and I think we haven't really seen the potential of this composition. I can see the potential of the comp, but I don't think they're meeting it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think there's some great points here, but it's the way that this team was built. I agree with Joe. There wasn't a proper thought process into adding Scream into the lineup. I think it was just Scream sick, let's add it. And so they've been struggling to find a style where they can win tournaments with purely rifles, and with purely a team that isn't crazy aggressive as well. Liquid are a very methodical team. Even when they're playing with a billion flashes, they're not inting at you like Sentinels are. They aren't running at you constantly and fragging you down. What they're doing is flashing in and setting up two of them on the angle. So they'll flash you away from the angle, so you have to peek away. And by the time you get your one person back to holding the angle, there's two people there gunning you down. So it's like a very methodical map control kind of style, which is the same thing that they did when they ran the Raising the Rainer previously. But the problem is that they're always fighting an uphill battle with whatever style they try, because they don't have that upper, because they can't just play the most default basic style of Valorant. So even though I love the creativity from Liquid, and even though I think that they're doing a good job with the pieces that they have, it's almost like watching a team that's playing with a handicap at times, because they are a naturally slow, methodical, pick-based team playing purely with rifles. And I don't know whether that meta will ever come when their style is fantastic. That's absolutely something that could happen in one patch as Riot balances the game. But at the moment, it always feels like Liquid are fighting an uphill battle to find a composition that works for them. And it's not natural. They're constantly having to go against the grain.
I feel that with this particular comp, if they made one change, it would have worked significantly better, which is switching Eccles back to the Omen and then have Soulcast play Breach, and you still have 5 flashes, but you just have, like, you can even see in some of these clips that Kurt is playing, some of the previous ones when they were on attack, there are just some angles when you're hitting a bomb site that you just cannot cover with just people alone looking at them. There are going to be angles where an op is just getting a free pick when they're hitting the bomb site. I think that one slight change would have made a significant difference. And this is something we had both independently thought, Josh, about the Cryptics being a joy to watch. He was really good on it, I think
Best
of
Killjoy
all,
we've seen so far.
Oh, for sure. I think of all the Killjoys so far, he was by far the most thoughtful. It seemed like everything he was doing, specifically with the turret, there was actually a purpose to it. He wasn't just placing things just because he has the ability and he's going to place it. There's actually a reason for what he was doing and why he was doing it. And I would have liked to have seen them, rather than... This Killjoy felt like an afterthought in this comp. I'd like to see them actually have that be more of a centerpiece of what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that if they were able to put themselves in more situations where they had more players alive getting into these bomb sites on attack, just better attacks overall from having angles covered by smokes on them, and then they're playing the post plants with the Killjoy, with Cryptics, that's something I would like to see in the future. I think that there are some positive notes to take away from what they were doing, but for me, just that one change, I think, would be a significant upgrade to that comp.
I think, though, that change would also reduce some of the efficacy of their comp. Because the way that Soulcast was using his Phoenix was... I mean, the ability usage that Soulcast was having was... I mean... immediately put him in some of the best ability usage that we've seen from Phoenix players, because most people don't use any of their abilities. They're just running at you constantly, and it's awful to watch because they're not getting the maximum value out of the agent whatsoever. But because he's forced to use his utility properly in this composition, he's finding very good walls to be able to act as smokes in these compositions. And for example, when you're talking about like bind, you can put a wall up in on B long to be able to get elbow control immediately, and nobody on site can contest you through that. It's like a long smoke essentially that you put up. Yeah, you have to be right next to it, and they know that you're crossing somewhat, counterable by a Sova arrow in the same way that any smoke is, but they were easily able to get elbow and lamp control on bind by playing in this like different creative way. And they still do have jet smokes to be able to cover some angles. It's the retakes that really bothered me, to be honest, because getting into a bomb site, there's normally only some very small angles that you need to cover. But if you're pushing back in from the defender's side and people can be anywhere, that's where they really struggle. And normally that's a massive strength for Liquid, their retakes. Whereas you try retaking on bind without smokes, it's impossible. Whereas pushing in, you can be very creative. But retaking, I mean, it is just impossible to get back in if you can't smoke off long or hookah or showers or short.
I think as well, particularly with the retakes, this is a team that is suffering a bit at the hands of the 1.07 patch with the Sage nerfs. I think what Link was able to do specifically on retakes on Sage with his abilities was very significant to their overall retake strategy from what we had seen in previous tournaments. I think
God, this was painful.
Yeah, I hate watching that. Oh my god. That was really nicely played by IP in a moment as well, though.
There was they actually played that moment back with comms as well later on.
Oh, really?
And someone, I don't know whether it was Eccles or Sliggy, their coach, had called for Scream to directly plant the bomb instead of sweeping the area because there was 8 seconds left. And so Stream just stuck the plant, and the guy that checks wood has an op, or I don't think he even checked wood link, but he's like swinging towards it, and he had an op anyway, so he wouldn't have been able to clear it. So just a poor call that got followed through.
Yeah, so. I'm not going to dive in, but I know the reasoning why, because I've analyzed the footage. This is not what we're here for, though. You know, I'm not going to give you the individual breakdowns. I think we've had our say on Liquid's comp. I'm still pretty torn on it. I'm willing to give it another tournament or two. And the cool thing about Liquid as well is that something we found out from Sliggy's interview with Immortal Minds was that he forces his players, at least in Liquid, to play a variety of roles, a variety of agents all the time. Because from the way Sliggy described it was that he's pretty confident that there's going to be like a pick ban system, or at least a ban system in the game, given the frequency of agent additions to the game. Pretty soon, like within the next year or two, it's probably going to be the case where you're going to have some sort of ban system in place. So he wants his players to be flexible. And I can imagine that some of these comps come out and they're in scrims when they're scrimming. They find some success with these compositions, but they just haven't quite found polish with it yet. And this is what I'm kind of holding out for, is to wait and see, okay, are Liquid going to come out and say, all right, this was a fun little experiment coming into this tournament. It didn't work out. We thought it was going to do well in scrims. We thought teams are going to be taken off guard of it, but in the end, didn't work out. Let's go back to something a little bit more default. That's what I like about Liquid. I think it's a positive for their team, because I think there's going to be a lot of teams out there that just are going to be stuck in their ways and not willing to experiment a lot. But it's a positive for me, at least, moving forward with Liquid. But yeah, we can put a little pin in that one and move on instead to FPX. This team...
Sorry, by the way, as well, though, they choked this map away like fuck. I mean, Liquid should have won this, and it should have gone to a third map. They're 10-5 up, and they I think like 10-6, and I think the next round or something... Oh, no, it was the previous one. It was at 10-5. They lost like a 2v5 when FPX had 2 sheriffs. And they just massively overpeaked, and they end up, the economy gets out of their control, and it ends up being a really tight game that they lose. Liquid did have opportunities to be able to... okay, you can't say that they had opportunities to win the series because they didn't go to a third, but they certainly had opportunities to win a map and push it towards a third that they had a chance of winning. So I don't think that everything's lost for Liquid, but it's kind of difficult to theory craft a way that they end up winning a title.
I think that's the problem. Yeah, it's just lack of upside. Because I mean, you're always going to find ways to. Well, obviously the pejorative term is cheese, but it's good to see them innovating and finding their own style. It's just I'm not sure the upside is there. They're going to have. It's going to be it's difficult to see them getting into a state where they actually are winning tournaments. And obviously that's the thing with this team and with the success they had in beta and with the amount that they're getting paid and so on. Your expectation has to be this is a team that can win tournaments, and I'm not convinced by that yet.
Okay, right. Let's talk about then the team that they were playing against in this match here. Then, because Fun plus Phoenix. I love this team after watching this tournament. They are so sick. It's such a shame that they just couldn't quite clinch it in the end. And of course, I mean the way the tournament worked out in the finals.
What the fuck are they feeding Angel?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, where did he find the Fountain of Youth? How?
I think this is maybe the 11th episode in a row I've talked about how much I like Angel in this game, but it's just it's unbelievable. What is he, like 62? And he's insane. He's the oldest player in the game, and he's unbelievable. It is genuinely such a cool storyline that he just couldn't find the success in CS for such a long time. It kept just coming slightly out of his grasp. He couldn't get the right team together over the past several years. His individual skill, it was just slipping, and then he plays Valorant, and he's just a god. It's
he's bopping.
Genuinely so cool to watch. It's such a great story, and it's what you love to see players coming from a different game achieve in a new game. Like, it's easy to look at the people who are trying to come over and get the quick check from the previous game in the early days and that type thing. But to see someone genuinely revitalize themselves, it's so cool, man.
I was such a big fan of FPX watching this tournament, of at least of the maps that I saw them play, which was a couple in the finals as well, and I watched them play against Liquid. But this was... I think this is a team with so much potential as well, and they've just only been getting better and better and better the more times we see them being showcased in terms of their ability to adapt in the middle of a game. My god. But their mid-game adaptations were so clean. If a team runs something against them, like a set play, and it happened previously in that game, they'll play around it. Like they've already got a read on what they're doing immediately. You cannot run the same thing, even if it's like 5 rounds in the future. You just can't. I mean, you keep running these shots in slow motion, trying to make our viewers ejaculate or something. Like, what's going on? trying to make them bust a nut when you're hitting these sheriff shots. But I think this team has so much potential. They are so sick to watch. And like you said, Wyatt, I mean, it's a perfect cacophony of different elements, right? You got the storyline of Angel, you got these young guns coming in as well, all these players just performing. Fortnite kiddos being led by Angel, the part-time fireman. That's what I like to call him when I watch him. He does look like he should be working part-time in a fire station.
Yeah, he does. He's got that very like honest look about it.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. You can tell he enjoys a beer or two on the weekend.
What I think is incredibly impressive from FPX's performance in this tournament is that they got brutalized by G2 in the upper bracket finals.
Yes,
I mean, they got destroyed by them. And then they come back into the finals, and it's the closest that G2 has ever been pushed in...
In fact, if they...
Ever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say in a match ever, because they have actually dropped like a BO2 during the, you know, like that...
Welcome to Orgrimmar. Yeah, that's group stages. Like,
yeah, group stages stuff, yeah. But yes, in terms of a BO3, BO5, whatever, they drew in terms of maps here. I mean, this was a... If we had more maps in the game, this could have been different. This is like one of the same like TSM versus Sentinels situations from FaZe, where, all right, Sentinels didn't come out with the win, FPX didn't come out with the win, but they played arguably better Valorant than the team that did. They just had the winner bracket disadvantage.
I mean, the funny thing is, I feel like, I mean, going in, they should have also been favored on. I don't know what happened on Bind. They went down 12. They went what 12-0 in the half.
Yeah,
and
no, it was horrific.
And I mean, I just don't watch it. I still don't know what the hell went on there. But I mean, on paper, they probably should have been favored to win Bind as well. So this was actually a ridiculously good performance from that perspective.
I think when you look at the finals, though, when you dig into each map, Ascent was very much not their normal performance. They played hyper aggressive on defense. Angel is like using his ult to teleport into G2's spawn.
Did you see that set play, by the way?
Yeah, this is
But
outrageously
did you see what they
good.
followed it up with? It was so fucking smart. I don't know if Kurt will be able to find a play because it's so specific, and I can't remember what round it happened. But he smoked himself off from top mid, so that when they peeked in spawn, they couldn't see him TP in. But then they followed it up with the Sova ult as well, to essentially clear all into spawn side. So it was just incredible. Angel was peeking at the exact same time, and when they tried to take the fight, they couldn't because they were getting Hunter's Fury from behind.
Yeah.
Like,
but this is not the kind of stuff that FPX has ever done before on their defensive sides. They don't play like that. G2 are the ones that play like that, where they are constantly putting pressure on you on the defense, and it just led to G2 crumbling. G2 don't have these very solid set